Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Hi, everybody. That's Rob Godlewski with the Think Small podcast. And today our guest is Todd Petty. Todd is the Chief Investment Officer for Mainstay Financial Services. Todd, it's great to have you here on the Think Small podcast.
Rob, a pleasure to be here and very excited to talk to you today on the podcast and to your audience.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Todd, Mainstay Financial Services doesn't give your business enough credit. So what I'd like to do is kind of have you introduce what Mainstay Financial Services is really all about, because you have a really unique approach to your business. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, well, I'm very excited to be back at a company where I was here a few years ago, back in 2019. And Mainstay Financial Services is the holding company, it's the equity, the capital company for our subsidiary company named Mainstay Senior Living. And Mainstay Senior Living provides every genre of senior housing possible that we can deliver to our customers: assisted living, independent living, skilled nursing, campuses, independent living. We have 47 communities across the Southeast. We're providing senior services and senior housing for the greatest opportunity of a lifetime, I say. Baby boomers over 65 by 2030. They control the majority of the wealth. They're going to need services. And for somebody that can understand how to deliver hospitality and asset management and healthcare and concierge services, all combined for our senior population, they'll do very well. But it's very challenging and difficult. But our company raises the capital. We build, we develop, we acquire, we reposition. We look at each opportunity and our geographical location to determine how we need to reposition the asset. And we provide housing to a very vulnerable population, most of our clients over the age of 85.
So the first time we spoke, Todd, you mentioned that you're laser focused on a very specific segment of the total addressable market of people needing senior living services. So I was really interested to learn more about that. So tell our audience exactly who you're targeting and who you provide those services for.
Yeah, there's a well-known conversation in the senior housing world, and that's the middle market. How can we take care of the middle market? I mean, if you look at wealth distribution in the United States, roughly the top 10% control 70% of the wealth, while the bottom half really controls none. You know, the median household sits around $75,000 to $80,000, and a meaningful percentage of households will struggle with a modest, unexpected expense. So the senior housing, as you're driving down the roads, these beautiful buildings, they're really built for the top 20%. And therein lies the problem. The top 20% of the population can afford a $5,000 to $7,000 rent per month for services, care, meals, ADLs, healthcare, and they can move in. The bottom 20% has a safety net. The government actually subsidizes in a variety of programs to take care of the folks that really don't have money. So that leaves 60% of the population that has no safety net, or they don't have enough money to get in. So the question is how do you crack that? And I'm on the middle market committee at the National Investment Center, and we talk about this all the time. But this is what our company very strategically focuses on. And the way to get there is you have to get your basis down in your development, your project and your housing project. You have to get it down so you can get your rents down. And people just can't figure out how to do that. And we're able to do that aside from a very creative owner and founder of our business. But we're very vertically integrated, and we can look at each deal, and these communities are now trading at a real attractive price. People are saying, hey, it's getting too complex, I want out. A lot of these communities are aging out and they need significant CapEx. They need significant remodeling dollars. And people can go get people to do this, but it's expensive and everybody has to make a living. But we have found that if we can go get a asset that's distressed and needs CapEx and buy at a very low basis, because we have you name it, we have a construction company, a drywall company, we have a drafting company, We have an engineering company. We do our own interior design. I mean, my title is Chief Investment Officer, but I mean, at any moment, our founder could call me to go to a skilled nursing facility and project manage an addition in the building to help them do that. So, and
I
I
can only
love doing.
imagine, right?
But what that allows us to do is, obviously we can get our costs really done through vertical integration. We can really beat up the price. So what everyone else is paying premium on for people to make livings, 20 and 30% returns to all the folks that need to make a remodel happen, we're able to do it internally. We're able to do it a very efficiently and a costly manner. And then we're able to have a lower basis in our communities and then pass on the savings and come in 500 to $1,000 less than most people are in the local market. And what I liken it to, Rob, is if you were going to spend the night somewhere, you might say, well, let's see what's in town, and you go to the Ritz-Carlton and you really love it because it has music throughout. They're greeting you. Hey, Rob, how are you doing today? Come in, sir. We're expecting you. There's hydration when you walk in. It smells good. There's aromatherapy. And these new senior housing communities are all like that. But you're paying $5,000 to $7,000 a month. So our strategy is to take something like a home, remodel it, and make it a beautiful bed and breakfast. So you can go to the Ritz-Carlton at $1,500 a night, or you can go down the road and, hey, this is a beautiful home. It's remodeled, but wow, it's smaller, but still it's comfortable. It has technology. It wraps itself around you. It's boutique, and it's $800 a night. And I still get all I want that I would at the Ritz-Carlton. And that's the play with our customers to say, hey, it's not as big, it's not as extravagant, but it does the job, and my rent is affordable, so I can sell my home and come in and get the care and services I need.
Todd, this is what I love so much about your approach to your business. First of all, you have your end customers always in mind first, right? It's that middle market who can't afford the high end and aren't getting a lot of the government services. They've got to pay for this on their own. So your goal is to keep those costs down as much as possible. And you do that not by building a brand new 300 to 1,000 bed facility from scratch from the ground up, right? You're out
Right.
there buying apartment buildings and older homes. And then you take it even a step further. You're vertically integrating all the services needed to upgrade those buildings to a place where you can have your customers come in and live. I
Yeah.
just think it's an amazing model. Besides that, you're really offering a private investment opportunity for investors to come in and participate in your model and in your ultimately your growth. That
Absolutely, 100%. The most interesting phenomenon was prior to the pandemic, senior housing was already behind in what it needed to provide to aging seniors.
mhm.
We a baby boomer generation that is living longer and has comorbidities, and ultimately a good percentage is going to need care. So we were coming out of the ground, but we were already behind. But there was anticipation that we would catch up. And then the pandemic hit and it slowed everything down. So we lost years, and we came out and people thought, oh, we're going to now build and prepare for the silver tsunami, they say, for the greatest
Hmm.
opportunity of a lifetime, generational of wealth that will transfer to the healthcare area. And so the problem was that post pandemic, we had higher interest rates, we had construction costs, we had inflation, we had labor that went sky high. And so now all these communities that used to cost $300,000 a door to build now cost $600,000 a door, and it doesn't pencil out. So everybody's put their pencils down, and there's no
Mm.
opportunity for new development, and no one's building for the future. So what can we do? We can now shift to value add and do something that people previously probably didn't want to do, Rob, but we've done it in our entire 20 years of existence. And that is
Hmm.
look for opportunities. And I'm not saying I don't want to lead anybody to believe this is easy, because it's not a formula. It's not like, well, just take old hotels that are not working and convert them. It has to be the right area. There has to be the demand. It has to be the right
Of course.
psychographic, demographic group. The group that's there that's aging has to be inclined to move in. Some places they are, and some places they're not. But you can get an opportunity where, wow, the hotel's not working. so it goes on the market and we can buy it at a low basis because the banks got it and they don't want it. And we've done this, and then we've renovated the building, took rooms out, increased common area, created outdoor spaces, and made affordable senior housing for a client that can spend $3,000 to $3,500 a month. And just for the audience to know, when you think about, there's a lot of discussion. Rob, you and I can discuss like, well, and this is true. I'm not moving into senior housing until I need to, and we're, whether we're baby boomers or Gen X, we're going to make that decision when we want to, because we're about relevancy and it's our decision, and that's correct. But this is talking about someone that's over 85, and right now 1 in 2 over 85 is demented, demented, and I hate to report this, but 1 in 3 has Alzheimer's, the Alzheimer's Association. So if we're all sitting here with 5 people and we're all 87, someone's struggling with brain failure. And it's not an issue of, will I go in? Do I want to go in? It's like, I need to go in. I need supportive services. And how most people will do that, and this is kind of my point, they have equity in their home. They will sell that equity and take that equity and then provide, and pay $3,000 to $3,500 affordable care versus $5,000 to $6,000. And they're able to stay 18 to 24 months and get the care they need with people that love them, take the burden off the family, and help them transition to that later stage of life they're going to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the business. So you came back to the business in 2019, correct?
Yeah. So I was president.
Yeah. Let's talk about your journey there.
I've always been fortunate. In the early years, I was in home health, and I had my own home health business. Respiratory care business. And I got into senior housing in around 2000. I've been here for 25 years and I just fell in love with it. I remember coming out of clinical respiratory care in the home and thinking, senior housing, how can it go wrong? You're just providing 3 meals a day and 24-hour watchful oversight and activities. And I learned it was the hardest thing that I had ever done in my life, because you're dealing with people. 60 residents in a building, 100 and their families, and then 60 employees and their families. So I started it, and I've always worked with startups, and I really love doing new buildings. I've worked with companies that have been known to bring technology and innovation, and that's why I love AI, and we can talk about that. But I found a home here first time around on the operations side, where I was running the operations, because I worked with an incredibly brilliant man that sees such a visionary to see assets that are so distressed and declined and everybody's passing on, that sees opportunity, works the magic within our vertically integrated infrastructure, and comes out with a beautiful buildings that win beautification awards in the cities, that offer a very affordable rent. Customers are happy, and our investors are happy as well, because our investors get, they can come in, and we have 350 high net worth investors. That changes 400, 450. It changes depending on who's in, but they love what we do. They're in income funds. They like to get their monthly stipend, and they're passionate about being in a mission-minded, service-oriented investment. So ran the operations, and I left. I worked with a tech company. We developed electronic healthcare app, worked for ultra affluent senior housing properties, which, it's fun. It's sexy and cool, and it gets talked about, but I missed making the difference in people's lives. It's something about laying down at night where you're making a difference, plus in an area where there's blue ocean because no one's there, that caused me to come back with the owner. So I came back because we're 47 communities. There are communities that are trading at, if you can build them for 300, as we said earlier, Rob, we're getting them for $30,000 to $60,000 a unit, and putting another $30,000 in it, and all in $100,000. And that's driving that low bases, that low rent, and we're attracting the middle market. That demand is shooting up everywhere right now. Something else we could talk about, but we're seeing demand in secondary and tertiary markets.
Interesting. So being in this business, this industry for so long, clearly you've seen not only times of rapid growth and expansion, but times of contraction and revenues coming down. Talk to us about a period in time when when you were dealing with the business and running the business, either in your operations role or in your senior investment role, about that time of contraction? How did you manage the business through that period? Not only from the operational side, but from the employee side, the human aspect of it.
Yeah, so it's interesting, Rob, because this industry, senior housing, it attracts primarily people that are very mission oriented as far
Mhm.
as wanting to take care of people. They're not really financially driven, and we're speaking about those on the ground taking care, providing direct care with the residents, whether it's, on the dining side, the care side, housekeeping side. They love seniors. And they're kind of what I would call supine temperaments or personalities. So a supine temperament is a person that has a high capacity to serve.
Mm.
They're somewhat reserved, but if you become the initiator, they can be very outgoing and very gregarious. But they have high capacities to serve, and they can serve and go home and love what they do, and you're not necessarily driven by needing a high wage. But if they're not rewarded, if they're not recognized, uh, they can do this a long time, but at some point, if they're not rewarded and recognized for the contribution they make, they can get very angry. Very
Mhm.
angry. So the key here is attracting these mission-minded people and then partnering with them and relaying to them their value. In the world we live in today, you know this, in the capital world, and I'm in that world. Somehow it's just forgotten. They just forget because they're linear, they're analytical, they're looking at spreadsheets. They just forget that there's
Sure.
human beings that have to do this. It's like, well, if they don't work out, we'll just replace them. And you cannot have that. You can't go into your business with that in line. You have to celebrate your employees. You almost have to have an inverted pyramid. Like the employees in the bottom need to be at the top, and the C-suite at the bottom supports the infrastructure going back the other way.
Right.
So
Right.
when everybody's running to figure out how to protect the financial asset and the viability that is so important, but you can't have just that, one-legged stool. You have to have the labor, the management of that labor capital has to be taken care of, and they're real people, and so they have to be celebrated, rewarded. The company has to make sure that the mission is known, and there has to be champions within the company to articulate that mission and communicate it, which is another thing. I'm not sure what's happening, but communication seems to be on a, I don't know. Communication seems to be on a low end right now. I'm not sure why,
Mm.
but I belong to the John Maxwell team, and talking to John Maxwell, he always was asked, hey, when is enough is enough? I mean, how often do we have to communicate a value of a person and edify them and exhort them and encourage them? I mean, when is enough is enough? He said, when you are exhausted and just ready to give up and can't do it anymore, double down. So I probably went too
Right.
philosophical on you, but when you have pandemics, when you have very tight margins in a building where 3 or 4 move outs can matter, where you're having to reduce cost to deliver this price point, the
Mhm.
team members have to have understanding of that. They have to have buy into that. They have to know what's going on. So you have to make it a matter of communicating very heavily on why you're doing it, what you're doing, and what we're trying to accomplish. Otherwise, people don't transmute that into what is going on. And because they're mission minded, they need to understand that. Did that make sense? I know I was a little bit all over the place.
It did, Todd. And I want to ask you this question then, based on your input there. So knowing the type of person that makes a very successful employee, at the residence level, right? Directly caring for your residents. And also knowing that now we're kind of in this economy of slow to hire, slow to fire.
Mhm.
Are you purposeful in the way you interview and hire and onboard your new employees? Are you using specific tools to make sure you're finding those right mission driven people?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are a lot of tools to address personality and predict a person's temperament or their belief system,
Hmm.
so that when pressures apply to that person, we kind of know what's going to come out of them, right? And that's
Right.
fine. That's good. But I think what I would say is one of the things that we're really spending time on that our founder is really pushing right now is a great book. I can't remember the author's name. You may know it, but it's not the why, it's the who. It's
Huh.
not the what, it's the who. We all can figure out what needs to be done. We can figure out what the plan needs to be, but the key is in who needs to sit in the seat to execute it. So it's having the right person in the right seat. And a resume
Right.
doesn't necessarily tell you that. An interview doesn't necessarily tell you that. People are smart. They can investigate companies and figure out what they want. But we try to spend more deliberate time with the people that we want to put in the seat to get to know them better. We really want to know what motivates them, what they're passionate about, what incentivizes them. So we do have a pretty lengthy interview process. We also like to get other people in front of them, different leaders of a community that are looking at the world in a different perspective, and spend time with them and get their feedback as well. And there's good, sometimes there's good outcomes of getting someone very seasoned in the industry. Sometimes they're stuck in ancient cultures, as I say. You know, they
Sure.
there's it's good to get people outside the industry, but if they don't understand the industry and the complexities, then that could be challenging. So I think we're always recruiting. We're always looking for people that have similar passion, similar worldviews. It's very difficult, though, Rob, to find somebody that is functions like a nonprofit business,
Mm,
but runs it financially in a for-profit way. And that's what you
right.
need. I mean, the nonprofits do great being very mission-minded, but not necessarily really tuned into the P&L that they need to be because they're usually larger, there's usually endowments. We have to run a very efficient profit and loss statement every month on our businesses to keep the rents low. So you've got to have someone that can do both. And then you have to have someone that can do hospitality because that's important to
Hmm.
the seniors. But then they have to be able to do asset management because there's a big building, 100-unit building they're responsible for with lots of complexity. And then they have to bring in a healthcare hat as well because ultimately you're providing care to the residents under one building. And that is very difficult because that's three different skill sets. And then you have to pay those people better as well because
Right.
they're offering their talent in exchange for the dollars.
Right. So the time you spend and the investment you put in to making sure you're hiring the right people, I can imagine, Todd, in your mind, it's well worth it compared to what you might experience in employee turnover and churn after the fact, after of not putting that time in up front. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
the C-suite, even the founder, I mean, he is sending the Indeed resumes at night, LinkedIn connections to people that he likes. It is a
Okay.
full-time job, and outsourcing this to, I have been in companies where I was vice chair and CEO, and we had great systems and we had great recruiting systems, and we outsourced the recruiting systems, and they had their systems to bring us good candidates. But ultimately, we didn't have a very high success rate because it was very systemized without the human component. And so, we are constantly talking to people, looking who's wanting to make changes. It's very important to have the right person in the right seat as the executive director to build a team that can take care of residents. And, they need to fit the company because every company has its own ecosystem. Every leader is different. And they have to understand the mission and make sure it's a good fit for them because we are not a transactional business.
Right. So let's now kind of flip the conversation to, periods of rapid growth and expansion. I mean, as all business leaders kind of know and realize that growth and expansion is a wonderful time to be in business, but it does bring a whole different set of challenges and I'll say problems to a business that you don't necessarily expect to find compared to times of contraction and slower growth. So talk to us a little bit about a time of rapid expansion and how you managed the business through that.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be in senior housing over the last 20 years, and it ebbs and flows
Of
depending on the
course.
economy. And we're also participating in technological changes that take place as well. And the biggest challenge is, I always say, if you talk with people, we're always kind of, Rob, put in a position like, do you believe A or B? Every any news agency I listen to, well, is it A or is it B? We believe B, and someone else believes A, and then
Right.
you're forced into a position, right? But usually it's not that simple. It's somewhere in the middle, and I liken that to in our industry, some people talk about tried and true operations. That's what they're about. We got to get back to the basics, and if we just did the basics and not get distracted by the shiny pennies, we'll be successful. So they focus on tried and true operations, but then there's no innovation. There's no systemization. There's no change. There's
Hmm.
no efficiencies with reduction of labor that technology can bring. And then there's other folks that talk about they're all about technology, about change. Let's break the glass even if there's nothing wrong with it and rebuild it. And so they
Sure.
adapt technology and innovation, but they forget the basic tried and true operations of HR, human resources, accounting and finance. Some of that stuff doesn't change. So what I always say, if you can blend tried and true to operations with innovation, you create a renaissance moment, right?
Mm.
Renaissance, taking the Middle Ages and the change that was coming on and blending them together, and it created a renaissance moment. So anytime I've learned that over through the years because I've been part of an innovation wave where we adopted all type of innovation. Uh, I've been I have found myself saying, "This is it. Once we achieve this, we will, we will crack the nut and own the market." And I've just found that none of that really exists. So
Mm.
I've tried to be much more open-minded, uh, more proactive, more trying to understand where the market's going. I mean, even just in our industry years ago, there was a hospitality model that seniors were rejecting because it didn't give them anything. And so we started building swimming pools in senior housing communities and dedicated movie theaters and art studio
Hmm.
and faith-based chapels and whatever, you name it. And that's what
Sure.
kind of the pension generation said, this is what I want. And now, because of the affordability and no one wants to pay for that anymore, and they're unused
Oh,
rooms. And so the whole market's like, how can we compress those rooms because that's not the demand anymore to get a lower rent because baby boomers want more affordability. And so, that changes. We saw in this industry everybody rejected technology, Rob. I remember in 2010
I can
going
only
to
imagine.
our national association for senior housing, and they were talking about this thing called the Wi-Fi. Actually, it's 2008. Wi-Fi, and would older adults adopt it? And should we put it in our
Oh my
buildings?
gosh.
And the panel said no. No, seniors don't want it. It's too costly. No, we might put it in, the sitting area, but everybody rejected it. And I was part of a company at the time where the leader was very innovative, and so we adopted everything. Radio frequency ID door locks like hotels where you use a card to open it up. Digital
Gotcha.
signage in the senior housing building. Aromatherapy, so when you walked in, it smelled like coffee or popcorn.
Yeah.
Music throughout the building. And everybody criticized it and said it was unnecessary expense. And then 2, 3 years later, the whole industry ran the other way. The herd changed and said, we got to adopt all this. And then they adopted all this technology in these buildings to the point when we were trying to figure out how to cut costs, the analysts were looking at the P&L, looking at all this subscription-based software that was for, lights automatically turning on and, all this technology when the shift had already occurred to robust technology in the building from Wi-Fi, download, upload, managed Wi-Fi to have the residents could do whatever they wanted with the Wi-Fi. So anyway,
Hmm.
I guess what I'm saying is that we try to figure out before everybody gets that where the market's going, and I've tried to in our development deals and in our as we buy and reposition assets, we are constantly looking at not only the demographic changes, but the psychographic changes. So when you're looking at this project in Savannah or Lakeland, Florida, or Atlanta, Georgia, in the 5 or 10 mile radius, what makes that market, those residents, those seniors, what makes them tick from a psychographic standpoint? So, who is their favorite team? Are they faith-based? What's motivating them? Are they conservative? Are they liberal? And try to
Hmm.
create an environment and a culture, a building that represents who they are, so when they move in, it feels like home. So these are some of the few things that we've done to try to prepare for the ever-changing demographic, psychographic world of senior housing.
Right. And in your business, growth is controllable, right? You're not going to see a incredibly massive growth rates because you have to you're pretty capital intense, right? To open new facilities, it takes a lot of capital to do that.
It does.
Whether it's your affordable model or for the folks building the high end facilities, it's capital intensive. So it, you're not throwing up new facilities, overnight to manage the demand. So I can see where a slow and steady approach with good operational foundations, but yet innovations in finding where your consumers are going, kind of like the old Wayne Gretzky adage, right? Skate to where the puck is going.
Right, right.
Um, I can imagine that that's a much better model for a business like yours.
Yeah, and I think that's real important, Rob, for the audience to know. You mentioned something really important because some people can drive around and begin to look at, car washes showing up in every quarter and then questioning why is this happening now? And it can explore that back to private equity saying we want a car wash in every corner and we're going to invest the money, and they pop up
Right.
because with senior housing, it doesn't work that way because when a senior housing community is built, it has to meet different life safety requirements. It's expensive. The building has to be able to burn slowly to protect the residents, so you have to spend more money. The investors have to invest in what we call pre-opening reserves. The time before it opens, there has to be marketing. You have to introduce your
Hmm.
community to the local area. You have to raise everyone's awareness that you're open because when you open, you need to start leasing up. When you open, there's money that has to be invested so that you, just like multifamily, that you are able to finance your losses initially. But with senior housing, you have labor losses as well. You have to put a full labor team in there for one residence as you do 50. You have to have a cook, a dining services manager, a maintenance guy, care staff around the clock.
For
So
sure.
all that has to be invested. So you have to book those losses in there. So all that has to be figured into the risk of people that are investing. So there has to be feasibility studies, there has to be market studies, there has to be the operator must meet the litmus test. So if something's coming out of the ground, it's not haphazard. It may or may not work, but senior housing owners and investors need to get more credit for what they're doing because it's something very valuable they're providing, to our clients. And there's a lot of time,
Hmm.
energy, and talent that goes into it. And one more thing, Rob, and if you don't mind me to kind of, I wanted to make sure I shared
Not at
this.
all.
Okay, so what the audience really needs to, one thing they really need to see is not view this as, hey, mom can't take care of herself in their home, so they have to move to a place where there's 24-hour watchful oversight and they're going to extract a big fee for it and sometimes the families can be upset about that. But what this really does several things. It allows a person to exit their home that they can't take care of. They can be in a place with other people that are going through similar things. So it provides
Hmm.
connection with them and camaraderie because most people the same age are going through the same thing.
Hmm.
What it does that a lot of people don't talk about though is it allows the family to ease them of the burden of figuring out or taking care of them themselves. But in a lot of ways, we have people moving in that are, in the sunset of their life, and they're gonna pass away. Moving to a senior housing community is their last place. But what it does, I've seen so much. It gives the opportunity for the family to be reconciled if they're not to their loved one, because everyone starts thinking, dad or mom is not going to be with us much longer, or they may be actively dying. I need to make it right. Not everybody
Yeah.
will do this, but a lot of people will. And then the senior who's been estranged from the family member or is not talking to them, unresolved issues, they realize I need to get this right because it's all not going to matter pretty soon. And it sets up an environment where the families can be reconciled, in end of life goals can be established, last wishes can be discussed in an environment that's safe, secure, and hopefully animated with things that they couldn't get by themselves. And that's what you get in a senior housing community. You get a lot of happy chemicals you can't get at home because you have connection with
Mhm.
other people. You have music playing, you have nice smells, you have 3 meals a day, you're being served, you have goals, which equals dopamine, of activities
Sure.
and celebrations. And you can't necessarily get that at home. And it really makes a difference so you can successfully age in your final years. And if that happens, it's worth the dollars you'll spend to be in an atmosphere like that.
Todd, I love your approach. And I will say this. Having a conversation with a chief investment officer, I did not expect this conversation to have so much human related impact and messaging. And I think it's tremendous. And I think that that's actually a common theme in a lot of my discussions with CEOs and business leaders through this podcast. Even in this world of AI, right? We're still trying to figure out how to integrate artificial intelligence into our businesses. But to a leader, everybody's more focused on what does that mean for the humans in my business and for the humans that are my clients and customers. So I really appreciate your approach on that, Todd.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Yeah, I have a comment on
Um,
AI. Do you mind if I share it?
Absolutely.
Okay, good, good. So I wanted just to kind of get people's thinking on this, on AI, at least how it's helped us. So because we are a vertically integrated company that has chosen to do that for cost savings, obviously, in a real world in senior housing, in a new development, there's usually a visionary that says, I have this vision, and it's usually pretty good. And they're usually
Hmm.
motivated from circumstances to build a beautiful building where seniors can thrive. And so they have the vision, but in order to accomplish that vision, they have to invite certain people to their table. So they have to invite a general contractor that's going to be the builder, and they're going to invite the interior design company that's going to create the special finishes in the building. And then they have to have an architect that's going to design the vision. And they have to have a project manager that's going to make sure everybody stays, the puppies stay in the box, so to speak. And then they're going to have to get it. Someone's got to reach out to investors and make sure that works. And there's a lot of people, and all those specialists get invited. They usually own their own companies, and you pay them for their work, plus they get a 30 to 40% return on their time. When you all that add that up, that's why at the end of the assisted living project, the owner is sitting at $600 a unit and has to charge a $5,000 to $6,000 rent to make the deal work. But what AI has potentially done is allowed us to do something we've never done before. So what I can do is I can now have a pro forma, a business plan, an evaluation, a demographic study, and we can come together, and I can invite AI in, and I can tell it, like, we are going to do this project. Here's my findings. I exhaust my findings. I need to do that first. I just can't magically say, help
Sure.
me. But I do everything I can based on my 20 plus years of experience of what I know about a senior housing project. And then I give that to my AI platform, my machine learning platform, and then I ask it to be a general contractor and be an
Mhm.
attorney and give me legal advice, be a general contractor and give me advice regarding the building, be a financial advisor on do the numbers work. I need an interior design to let me know what my choice right now to represent what the market wants looks like. And I can ask AI to be in those positions and to review historically current trends. And I can ask it to be that person and give me feedback that in the past I would have had to invite people to the table, had lots of meetings, and begin to assimilate that into my vision. So that's the beauty of AI, because once you tell it what you want and need, it can be that person based on the data that you give it. And we've never been in a place like this before. A lot of people talk about a lot of people talk about AI taking jobs. I would say I always tell people AI arrives at just the right time to save senior housing. And what I mean by that is we have people now that just don't want to do things that they would years ago. And I don't know why. But we used to hire people at night and, we would want them to clean, all the common areas and vacuum them and while the residents were sleeping. And now, no, I don't want to do that. I don't do that. I'm not going to do that. Or I might not be able to, I hire them to do it and I can't get them to do it because they're working two jobs. And this one is their second and they're probably just, resting because they're so sleep deprived. So how do I fix that? It's frustrating. Well, I can pay a robot that can that can roll up and down my hallways and common areas through AI, map it out and vacuums at a very low intensity that doesn't disturb the residents and cleans them at night. And I don't have to have a person doing that. I can have a robot that goes up and down and through a beam of light can let me know that the resident is safely asleep in the room, or they're up around, or something's not right. There's no movement. So I can check on them rather than depending on people going into the room every 2 hours and checking them and possibly disrupting them. One more and I'll be done. Even in electronic healthcare records, we can now take the data and AI can say, hey, based on what's going on with Todd or the resident, they're in decline. And I'm alerting you so you can be proactive and do something about that. Rather than no one really realizing the decline's taken place and not doing anything about it, then we have an episodic healthcare event that's bad. So it augments what people are already doing, and it does things that people don't want to do with a declining labor. A labor shortage we're coming. So I see this no different than machines making us more efficient, in the early 1900s, and what the internet did in 2000. I was the one that said, I will never go online and do my banking. I do not trust it. I remember saying that. And now I do it on my app. I hardly even do anything.
Right.
So I just think we're demonizing it a little bit too much. I think it arrives just at the right time to take us to the next level in the world.
Todd, you are right in line with basically every CEO I get to speak with through this podcast that says the same thing you're saying. They're not looking at AI to displace workers. They're not looking at AI to eliminate a portion of their workforce. They are looking to AI to make their workforce more efficient and more effective. And I don't care what you hear on the news or and which side of the political aisle you're on from where that news is coming from. Nobody on this podcast is looking to slash 30% of their workforces, but they're
100%.
engaging AI so they can focus more time on the human aspects of their business. And that's not me talking. That's my guests speaking. And I love that. And you are reinforcing that message, Todd.
Yeah, frees time for us actually to spend more time with people, and that's the goal.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I think ultimately this is going to net out to more employment. We just don't know what those jobs are going to look like quite yet. And
Yes.
And I'm okay with that type of uncertainty, right? But anyways,
exactly. And I would encourage people to just start using AI. You don't need. There's a whole cottage industry that's grown up over AI. That you have to subscribe and buy their prompts. And what I have found AI to do very well. You don't need prompts if you can clearly articulate what you need. You don't need the prompt. And that's no different than me talking to you, Rob, about a project we're doing or strategizing or collaborating. We just talk to one another. And if you do that with AI, as it learns who you are and you're specific at the ask, it can give you valuable data. But just like me talking to you, you're going to vet anything I share out, Rob, right? I'm just not going to tell you what to go do and you're going to just go do it. You're going to simulate it and check it out. And you should do that with AI too.
Absolutely. AI is not necessarily a destination, but it's a tool to use in our business journey, or
100%.
even in our personal journeys, for sure. Um, Todd, this has been a terrific discussion. The last point I want to leave you with is, over the next 3 to 5 years, what does the business look like for Mainstay Financial and Mainstay Senior Living, and and uh, and what would be preventing you from achieving those goals?
Yes, that's a great question. So, I would say in the investment world right now, the hottest topic for senior housing is value add repositioning, because no new development cannot be done. So the dollars are going to go through value add. What I love about that is that you're taking existing buildings and infrastructure that already
Mhm.
exist, and you're going to reposition them, remodel them, and turn them into something really cool. And you're not just going to discard them and go build something new, which I never have liked that approach. Um, so we've already been doing value add all these years, and so I believe we're ahead of the market. And my goal is always to be slightly ahead of the market and talk about things where and be there first. I don't care if a lot of people come in and do it behind me, but I really would like to be the one that talks about it. So, we've talked about getting to 40 to 80 communities over time, but we're not going to be able to do that quickly. I mean, the middle market's really, it's not a branding category, it's a math problem. So we've structured our platform, capital, operations, and geography to solve that. So over the next 24 months, we're probably in the range to two to four acquisitions per year, depending on the market
Mm.
condition. Most of our focus is going to be Southeast. We're actually building clusters within markets, whether that's a smaller city like Lakeland, Florida, or a larger market like Atlanta. And we want to be able to share resources by clustering. That's something else. Most people are like they don't want, I don't, they're all over the place. It's inefficient. You don't get
Hmm.
synergies. We have 9 buildings in Lakeland, Florida alone. And Rob, we didn't plan this, but while everybody was saying secondary and tertiary markets will never deliver, the capital markets said this. And so we're not going to build. We're going to MSAs. We've always been in secondary markets. And the National Investment Center that tracks market penetration rate, in other words, how many seniors need senior housing and what's available. The third
Yeah.
largest market penetration rate right now is in secondary, almost tertiary market, Lakeland, Florida, between Tampa and Orlando. So we
Right.
have 9 buildings there in Lakeland, what we own, skilled nursing, independent living, assisted living. So the need is 2 to 1. For every one unit available, there's 2 people that need that unit in Lakeland, Florida, because the
Wow.
over 65, 75 population is dense in Florida. And they have
Hmm.
homes,
Yes,
or
it
they have
is.
mobile homes, they have equity, and they're aging. They're all aging. If you look at the age, particularly for Florida, they're now moving into where they need care, so they're selling their homes and coming in. So we're going
Hmm.
to continue to cluster, build where we're already at to get synergy, get our economies of scale, and we'd like to do 2 to 4 acquisitions a year. We did 4 last year, and we have 2 under contract this year. But we want to do it smart, and we want to keep the boutique bed and breakfast feel. So it's going to be a lot of work, but we're excited about where we're heading.
That's great, Todd. What a great conversation. Thank you for your comments on AI and how you're using them to be more efficient, be more effective, and be more human.
Thank you, Rob. I
I
enjoy talking about it. Thank you for
I
the
love
opportunity.
that.
Hope we brought value
Again,
to
this
your
is
audience.
Oh, of course, it's going to be a great conversation. Again, this is Todd Petty. He's the Chief Investment Officer with Mainstay Financial Services and Mainstay Senior Living. Todd, thank you so much for your time today on the Think Small podcast.
Thank you, Rob. Godspeed.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?